We're going to continue along our earning money journey today with looking at probably what you're going to come across first in your working career, and that's the hourly rate and overtime method of getting paid. Some of you have part-time jobs, and chances are you get paid a certain amount of money for every hour that you work. That's exactly what we're talking about here today. Okay? So you get paid by the hour, and the nice thing about this is you get paid more if you work more than a certain number of hours per week. And typically, that number is 44 hours. Okay? So between Monday and Sunday, if you work 44 hours, great, you get paid for every hour. Anything above and beyond those 44 hours, you're going to get some extra money. Okay? And this is the overtime part of your pay. Overtime is normally paid at time and a half. This is the term that is thrown around, which means that you get 1.5 or 1.5 times the regular hourly rate. Okay. If you work 1 extra hour of overtime, that means you get paid for 1.5 hours. Okay? Or if you work for 10 hours of overtime, you'd actually get paid for 15 hours. Okay, that's where that time and a half comes in, and we'll look at how that works as we go through some of the examples down here. Now, with overtime, there are some special cases where you may get paid more than time and a half. Okay, you may get double time, or sometimes even up to triple time if you're working some holidays that businesses are open, people don't want to work, so they offer these incentives. Typically, for statutory holidays, your company has to offer you overtime. Okay, and if you get paid double time, well, that means you get paid twice as much as you should. Or if you work 1 hour, you actually get paid for 2 hours. Okay, so it's almost like free money, which is always a good thing. Okay. So in these three examples, if we look at the first one here, it says Amanda works 5 hours on Thursdays, 7 hours on Fridays, and 8 hours on Saturdays. She works 3 days a week. What we want to find out is her gross pay for a 2-week pay period if she makes $13.45 an hour. Don't worry so much about this word gross right now. I'm throwing it in there because it's going to come up very frequently as we move on. We'll talk about it in a few days as we begin the next unit, the third unit. But for now, all we want to do is calculate her pay. Okay? We want to be careful. We want to look for a 2-week pay period. Okay? And she's earning $13.45 an hour. So using the information we're provided, 5 hours on Thursdays, 7 hours on Fridays, and 8 hours on Saturdays, we could figure out how many hours Amanda works in 1 week. Okay. So if she works 5 hours on Thursdays, we can add that to the 7 hours she works on Fridays, then we can add that to the 8 hours she works on Saturdays. So in 1 week, she works a total of 20 hours. Now, because we're looking at a 2-week pay period, well, if she works 20 hours in 1 week, we would want to double that, because it doesn't tell us anything about her schedule changing. It tells us that every Thursday she works 5 hours, Fridays 7 hours, and Saturdays 8 hours. So over the course of 2 weeks, Amanda would work 40 hours. Okay. Now, she's making $13.45 an hour. Well, we know she's working 40 hours. So to calculate her pay, 40 hours times $13.45 for every hour. Pull out your calculator here. 40 hours times $13.45 per hour. Her paycheck at the end of that 2-week pay period would be $538. Now, her paycheck actually wouldn't be $538. It'd actually be a little bit less than that, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next unit. Okay, so hang on for that. But for now, her $538, this is what her gross pay would be. Okay. Now, there's another way we can do the calculation here. We could figure out her 20 hours for 1 week, and then we could multiply that 20 hours by the $13.45 to figure out how much money she would earn in 1 week. and then we could take that amount of money and double it to figure out how much money she would earn in 2 weeks. If you do the calculation like that, you should still come up with $538 as her gross pay. But if you try the calculation on your own slightly differently, it'll still work out. Okay, next example. Let's assume that your job pays you overtime. And whenever you hear the word overtime, always assume time and a half. Okay? If you're going to get paid double time or triple time, it'll tell you specifically in the question how that would be. Okay? So you're going to get paid overtime at time and a half for all hours that you work over 44 hours. And you've got a pay of $10.50 an hour. So we got 3 examples here. Find the amount that you would make for the week where you work 38 hours. Now this first calculation is pretty straightforward. The 38 is under the 44 regular hours. So you're just going to get paid your regular $10.50 every hour. So 38 times $10.50 an hour. 38 times 10.50 equals $399. Okay. We always want to include that dollar sign when we're talking about money, just so we're absolutely clear in what we're talking about here. As we move to the second example, what if you work 49 hours? Well, you'll notice the 49 hours here is more than the 44 hours. Okay? So when we have more hours than the 44, what we need to do is break this up. Okay? So we were going to get paid for 44 regular hours. Okay. And then if I take my 49 hours that I work and I subtract the 44 regular hours, 49 minus 44 gives us 5 hours. And these extra hours are the ones where we get paid the overtime or the time and a half. Okay. So 2 parts to this calculation. The regular hours. The regular hours get calculated just like we did in the first example. So we're going to have 44 hours times $10.50. 44 times 10.50 would be $462. So for those regular 44 hours, you get paid $462. When we get to our overtime hours, OT, short form for overtime, okay. Similar calculation. We're going to take our 5 hours, multiply it by our hourly rate of $10.50. But then, because we're overtime, we get paid time and a half. We want to multiply this by 1.5. So there's one little extra piece to the calculation here. So I'm going to go to my calculator. I'm going to do 5 hours times $10.50 times 1.5 for that time and a half gives me $78.75. Okay. So if I just go back in that calculation one more time, if I do the 5 times 10.5, if I just worked 5 regular hours, that would be $52.50. But because I get paid that time and a half, that $52.50 magically changes to $78.75. Okay. Last step is to figure out our total pay. We want to take our $462 that we get for our regular pay, and we want to add it to the $78.75 that we get for our overtime pay. So 462 plus 78.75 equals $540.75. So we can calculate the regular and the overtime hours separately, combine them together to get our total pay. You might want to try this next one on your own following that model. Okay. Once you have it completed, start the video again and see if you got it. Again, for the 68 hours, I'm going to have 44 regular hours. And then I'm going to figure out how many hours of overtime I work. If I work 68 hours in total, and I subtract the 44 regular hours, that's going to give me 24 hours of overtime. So for this one, we're going to calculate 44 regular hours of pay and 24 overtime hours of pay. So for the regular, it's the same calculation as up here, 44 hours times 1050. So I've already got the calculation done. Okay. For the overtime hours, I'm working 24 hours of overtime. I'm still getting my $10.50 an hour. But because it's overtime, I also have to multiply by 1.5. So 24 hours times $10.50 is $252. Now that would just be regular pay for 24 hours. But because it's overtime, I need to multiply it by 1.5. And it brings it all the way up to $378. Okay. Last step, what's your total pay? Well, I'm going to take my 462, I'm going to add my 378. I got the 378 there. I'm going to add 462 is a total pay of $840. Okay, last example, similar type of question, but it looks a little different because we actually want to work a little bit backwards. It says you bring in $38,480 in 1 year. Now, if you worked every scheduled shift, what is your hourly rate of pay? Okay. Now, what we want to think about is we're going to use generalities here. We want, if you work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Okay. So what we want to do is figure out, if I make $38,480 in 1 year, well, how many hours am I actually working to earn that money? Well, if I'm working 8 hours a day, I can multiply that by 5 days a week. This goes back to that flow chart that we had on the day that we talked about salary. This would be 40 hours that we work per week. Okay, so if I work 40 hours a week, how many hours would I work in a year? Okay, well, if 40 hours is 1 week, there's 52 weeks in a year, so I can multiply that together. I'm going to say 40 hours times 52 weeks is 2,080 hours that you work every year. So now that I figured out how many hours I work in a year, I know how much money I make in 1 year. I want to take my $38,480 and divide that into 2,080 hours that I work per year. So $38,480 divided by 2,080 hours that I work. Seems like you're working an awful lot. 38,480 divided by 2,080 equals 18.5. So this means that for every hour you work, you earn $18.50. Again, this goes back to following the flow chart and following the arrows and the different calculations we can do to get between the different the different pays. Okay, so days to weeks, so 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then from 1 week to 1 year, multiplying by 52. Okay. Give the worksheet a shot, hand it in when you're done, and then you can move on to the last part of this unit.